You ever get a notification that makes your stomach drop a little, even though it's just your phone buzzing? Yeah, that was me last month. It was a Wednesday afternoon. Hot, slow, and boring. I was stretched out on my bed in nothing but gym shorts, scrolling through reels and sweating through my sheets when the little Facebook ding popped up. Mark Whitman sent you a friend request. I froze. Mark Whitman. That name wasn't just familiar, it was my best friend Drew's dad. I blinked at the screen, confused. Why would Drew's dad be adding me on Facebook? I sat up slowly, like that would somehow help me process the information better. I hadn't seen Mr. Whitman in months, not since the last time Drew and I grabbed lunch with him after moving back from college. I mean, sure, we were all friendly, but we weren't exactly texting. I wasn't even sure he used Facebook, let alone enough to send friend requests. Curious, I tapped into the profile. Same aviator-wearing, square-jawed guy the first remembered. Fit for his age, which he knew, and clearly not shy about it. His recent photos were mostly hiking trips, sweaty bike rides, a couple of him in his backyard shirtless, holding a beer like he was auditioning for a calendar shoot called Divorced Dads of Oregon. I stared at his profile picture a beat too long, then hit accept before I could overthink it. That probably should have been the end of it. It wasn't. The next day, I posted a picture. Totally normal. Just one of those post-gym mirror shots that I only uploaded to Facebook because my Instagram was already too curated, and I didn't think anyone there would care. But 2 hours later, I got the notification. Mark Whitman reacted red heart to your photo. I stared at it for way too long. A heart? Not a like. Not even a fire emoji on Insta. A heart reaction on Facebook. The social media equivalent of telling your mom's book club you think someone's stunning. I told myself it didn't mean anything. Maybe he just tapped the wrong thing. Except that wasn't his only reaction. I checked my other photos. My beach pic from spring break, heart. The poolside one with my head tilted back and abs catching the sunlight. Heart. All within the last 24 hours. And none of them had been liked by him before. It was like he'd gone on a little shirtless scavenger hunt. I tried to laugh it off. Maybe he was just being nice, supportive. Some guys are like that. And Mr. Whitman had always been friendly. Too friendly, maybe. I remember one time he joked about how I'd grown up, gave me that once-over nod guys give when they're half complimenting and half challenging you. Still, I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but then came the DM. I was brushing my teeth when it popped up. Looking solid these days, you must be working out like crazy. I stared at the message, foam dripping from my mouth, electric buzz running straight down my spine. I didn't know what to say. Was this flirty, or was I just insane? I wiped my mouth, rinsed out my toothbrush, and sat down on the edge of the tub to reply. Yeah, trying to stay consistent. Gym's been kind of my therapy lately, LOL. Simple. Safe. Normal, he responded instantly. It's paying off. You filled out a lot since last summer. Didn't even recognize you in that last pic? And, okay, that was definitely not normal dad behavior. I didn't reply. I just closed the app, tossed my phone on my bed, and walked into the kitchen like my heart wasn't racing. But from that moment on, something had shifted. Because the next time I saw Mr. Whitman, he didn't just look at me like his son's best friend. He looked at me like he was seeing something else entirely. And I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel it too. I didn't run into Mr. Whitman again until the following weekend. Drew had invited a few of us over to his dad's house to hang by the pool. Just a chill day, he'd said. Burgers, beer, maybe a game on inside if it gets too hot. It sounded harmless enough. But I hadn't stopped thinking about that DM. When I pulled into the driveway, Drew was already outside setting up the speaker. I hopped out, gave him the usual bro hug, and grabbed the case of beer from my back seat. Dad's around somewhere, Drew said, nodding toward the house. Probably shirtless and grilling like it's his religion. I laughed, but yeah, of course he was. Mr. Whitman stepped out a few minutes later, and I swear to God, the way he looked at me made me forget how to hold the beer case properly. Aviators again, no shirt, blackboard shorts, and a confident, unbothered expression like he didn't know exactly what he was doing. "Damn," he said, looking me up and down as I set the drinks on the table. "You're jacked now, huh?" I tried to play it cool. "Guess I finally listened to all those protein shake lectures you gave us in high school." He laughed, deep and familiar, but his eyes lingered a little too long. "Well, whatever you're doing, it's working." Drew didn't even flinch. He was too busy arguing with someone about fantasy football, totally oblivious. But I felt it. The heat behind Mr. Whitman's words. The awareness in his gaze. And the worst part? I liked it. It made me feel seen in a way I hadn't realized I wanted. Not like a kid anymore. Like a man. We hung out for hours. Swam, drank, messed around with the football in the yard, but every so often, I'd catch Mr. Whitman watching me. When I pulled myself out of the pool. When I stretched out on a lounge chair. When I leaned over to grab a burger and my abs flexed. And I swear, every time our eyes met, he didn't look away. At one point, I went inside to grab more towels. The house was quiet, the AC humming low. I was drying my hands when I heard footsteps behind me. "Hey," came his voice. I turned, startled. Mr. Whitman stood in the doorway, closer than I expected. "Didn't mean to sneak up on you," he said, smiling like he hadn't just cornered me in his kitchen. "I just wanted to say sorry if my comment the other day was out of line." My throat went dry. "It wasn't," I said, maybe too quickly. He raised an eyebrow, amused. "You sure? I might have had a drink or two. Didn't want to freak you out." "You didn't." My heart was pounding. There was a long pause. Neither of us moved. Then he took a step closer. "You've changed a lot," he said, voice lower now. It's hard not to notice. I didn't know what to say. Every nerve in my body was buzzing. I couldn't decide if I wanted to bolt or stay perfectly still and see what he did next. Then, casually, too casually, he reached out and brushed something off my shoulder. A drop of pool water, maybe, or nothing at all. His fingers grazed my skin for half a second longer than necessary. That touch burned through me. He smiled again, softer this time. "Well, towels in the guest bathroom if you need another." And then he walked away. Just like that. Cool, calm, like he hadn't just lit a fuse between us. I stood there, heart racing, wondering what the hell I'd just stepped into. Because one thing was clear now. This wasn't in my head. I couldn't stop thinking about it. The comment. The message. The way his fingers brushed my skin in the kitchen, like it was casual, but definitely not. That night after the pool hang, I laid in bed and replayed every second of it in my head like some kind of internal security footage. I kept asking myself if I was imagining things, if I'd misread it. But then I remembered the way he looked at me, like I was something new, something he wanted to figure out. I didn't see him again for a few days. Life went back to normal. Mostly. Drew and I played some Xbox, I hit the gym, worked a couple shifts at the cafe. But the silence on my phone felt louder than usual. Then, late one night, it buzzed. "Mark Whitman, you free tomorrow afternoon?" I just stared at it. It didn't say why. Didn't offer a casual reason like helping him move a couch or grill some burgers. Just 7 words. No emojis, no fluff. I waited a minute, then typed back, "Yeah, what's up?" He replied, "Need a hand with something. 2 p.m.? I should have asked more. I should have clarified. But I didn't. "Sure, I'll swing by." The next day, I got there right on time. Drew wasn't home. Said he was working a double. That part felt important, even though no one said it out loud. Mr. Whitman answered the door in joggers and a fitted black t-shirt. No shoes. Hair still damp, like he'd just showered. "Hey," he said, stepping aside. "Come on in." I followed him into the kitchen, unsure what I was expecting. Furniture to move? Broken plumbing? A grocery haul? What I got was a half-assembled rowing machine in the middle of the living room. "Figured you might know how to put this thing together," he said, like this was the whole reason. I laughed, half out of relief. You bought a rower? Midlife crisis, he said, smirking. I already did the motorcycle phase, so now it's fitness gear and protein powder. I crouched to inspect the parts, genuinely trying to focus. Where's the manual? He shrugged. Somewhere. I figured I'd call in my gym expert. The next 20 minutes were normal enough. Tools, bolts, banter. He made a couple jokes, and I kept reminding myself to breathe, to stay grounded. But then, as I leaned over to screw in a support bar, I felt it. His eyes. On me. And this time, I didn't ignore it. I looked up slowly, met his gaze. Neither of us looked away. The silence stretched. He cleared his throat, stepping back. You've really grown into yourself, he said, quieter now. I remember when you were all bony elbows and shaggy hair. Yeah, well, I muttered, trying to sound chill. Puberty hit eventually. He laughed, but there was heat behind it, like the joke was just cover. I'm serious, he said. You look good. That made me freeze. The way he said it, it wasn't fatherly. It wasn't innocent. I straightened up. My heart was beating too loud. Is that why you messaged me? He didn't answer right away. Just looked at me, thoughtful. Then, part of it. I swallowed hard. And the likes? He stepped a little closer. Was I too obvious? I didn't know what to say. Every nerve in my body felt like it was buzzing, waiting. Then he reached out, slow, like giving me time to stop him, and brushed his hand along my upper arm. You're not a kid anymore, he said, voice low. And just like that, the air between us snapped tight. My breath caught in my throat. Because I knew if I didn't step back right then, something was going to happen. And I didn't want to stop it. I didn't move at first. I don't think either of us breathed. His hand was still resting lightly on my arm. Warm, steady, definitely intentional. And that tiny touch felt bigger than anything that had happened so far. I'm not trying to make you uncomfortable, he said quietly. If I am, just say so. His words were careful, controlled, but his eyes didn't match that calm. They flicked down my chest for half a second before coming back up to mine. No, I said, surprised by how certain I sounded. You're not. The corner of his mouth lifted. Good. He dropped his hand, but the space he'd created didn't feel like space at all, more like a tether pulling tighter. I tried to distract myself by picking up another bolt, pretending the rower was suddenly the most important thing in the world. So, I said, forcing my voice back to normal, you really couldn't figure this out without me? He let out a breath, low and amused. I probably could have, but then I wouldn't have had a reason to see you. That made my stomach flip. Still crouched on the floor, I shook my head a little, trying to hide a smile. That's a pretty lame excuse, you know? Maybe, he said, stepping around to the opposite side of the machine. Or maybe I just like having you here. I glanced up. Our eyes caught again. It was ridiculous how fast everything could shift. 1 second, we were joking about assembly instructions, and the next, every word felt like a dare. We finished the rower eventually, or at least, it stood up straight and didn't collapse when he leaned on it. Good enough for both of us. He clapped his hands together like it was a major life achievement. See, he said, knew I couldn't do this without you. You barely did anything, I teased. He grinned. Supervising is a very important role. I rolled my eyes and grabbed my water bottle. My heart had slowed a little, but the air still felt thick. Hey, he said, softer again. I wasn't kidding about the changes I've noticed. I looked at him, not sure how to respond. You carry yourself different, he went on. Confident, strong, like you finally know your own value. That hit me harder than I expected. Because the truth was, I hadn't always felt like that, not even recently. Hearing someone see it, someone like him, it meant more than I wanted to admit. Thanks, I managed. He nodded once. Then, you ever think maybe that's why I messaged? My pulse jumped. He took a small step closer, giving me time to react, to back away if I wanted. But I didn't move. I saw your picture, he said, and it didn't feel like I was looking at my son's high school buddy anymore. My chest tightened. He was right there now. Not touching, but close enough that I could feel the heat coming off his skin. "What did it feel like?" I asked, barely above a whisper. His gaze dropped to my mouth for just a second. A single second that felt like a decision being made. Then he looked back into my eyes. "Like I was noticing a man," he said. "One I find really hard not to notice lately." The breath caught in my throat. Before I could say anything back, before anything else could happen, the sound of a car door slammed outside. We both jerked our heads toward the window. Drew. His voice rang out through the hallway a moment later, calling for his dad. We both stepped back at the same time, like someone had just hit rewind on a moment we weren't supposed to be living in. Mr. Whitman swallowed, then cleared his throat and ran a hand through his hair. "We'll finish testing the machine later," he said, somehow managing to sound casual. I nodded, grabbing my hoodie a little too fast. "Yeah, sure." We walked toward the kitchen, putting space between us just as Drew came around the corner. "Yo!" Drew grinned when he saw me. "You helping my old man become a gym bro?" I forced a laugh. "Someone's got to save him from the instruction manual." Drew snorted and tossed his keys on the counter. I kept my face neutral, my breathing normal. Like 10 seconds earlier, his dad hadn't been close enough for me to count his freckles. But when I glanced sideways, Mr. Whitman was already looking at me, like the moment wasn't forgotten. Just paused. Dinner that night was normal. Too normal. Drew was in full host mode, tossing burgers on the grill, drinking a cheap IPA, talking about fantasy football like nothing existed outside of touchdowns and draft picks. I nodded along, laughed at the right parts, but my mind was 1,000 miles away, or more accurately, about 6 feet to my left, where his dad sat, silently sipping a bourbon. Mr. Whitman hadn't said much since Drew came home. He played it cool, like nothing had happened. But every time I looked over, I'd catch his eyes on me. Just for a second, just long enough to feel it. And every time it happened, my chest tightened. It was like a game we were playing, silent, invisible, loaded with tension no one else in the room could feel. After we ate, Drew disappeared to take a phone call. Something about work. Mr. Whitman and I were left clearing the dishes. He passed me a plate. Our fingers brushed. Neither of us flinched. The silence stretched again. Thick and heavy, but not awkward. "I meant what I said earlier," he murmured. I glanced over, careful not to speak too loudly. "Yeah?" He nodded once. "You're not a kid anymore, and I'm not going to pretend I don't notice." I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. "What does that mean exactly?" He looked at me for a long moment. "It means I've been thinking about you more than I probably should." I didn't know what to say. My heart was thudding in my chest. Before I could respond, Drew's voice echoed from the hallway. "Yo, I'm heading out to meet Rachel. You good here?" Mr. Whitman looked at me. Just looked. Not with pressure, not with urgency. Just a question in his eyes. I hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, I'm good." Drew grabbed his keys and was out the door a minute later. The sound of the car pulling away felt like the world had shifted. We were alone. Mr. Whitman leaned back against the counter, arms crossed. "You staying long?" I shrugged. "I wasn't planning to. Just came to help." "You've helped more than you realize," he said, voice softer now. "I didn't expect to feel this drawn to you." My breath caught. "And now?" His eyes didn't leave mine. Now I'm standing in my kitchen, wondering if I'm crossing a line just by saying that out loud. He stepped closer. Not enough to touch, but enough that I could feel it again, that pull, that quiet electricity humming between us. "Do you want me to stop?" he asked. And that was the moment it became real. Because I didn't want him to stop. I didn't want to pretend I hadn't noticed the way he looked at me, or the way my body responded when he stood too close. I didn't want to keep acting like this tension didn't exist, like it wasn't already shaping the way I saw him. I shook my head slowly. "No, I don't." Something shifted in his face then. A flicker of relief, of decision. He stepped forward, and this time, he didn't stop until we were toe-to-toe. "I've tried to keep it appropriate," he said, voice low. "You're Drew's best friend. I know how it looks." I swallowed. "It doesn't have to mean anything crazy." He gave a small smile, a little sad. Doesn't it? We stood there for another beat, hearts pounding, shoulders almost touching, and then, almost imperceptibly, he leaned in. And I didn't stop him. Our foreheads barely touched. Not a kiss, not yet, but just that contact made something inside me unravel. The heat, the tension, the want that had been building like steam under a lid for weeks. "I'm not good at this," he whispered. "Neither am I said. But in that moment, it didn't matter, because we both knew, whatever this was, it wasn't going away. I don't remember who moved first. Maybe it was him, maybe it was me, but suddenly our lips were touching, not desperate or fast, just enough to test the boundary, like we both needed to know if this was really happening. And once it did, everything else faded. His mouth was warm, steady, and sure, like he'd been thinking about this for a long time, like he knew exactly what he was doing, and exactly how wrong it was. But I didn't stop it. I didn't want to. The kiss only lasted a few seconds. He pulled back first, eyes scanning mine like he was searching for regret. There wasn't any. He took a small step back, hand raking through his hair like he was trying to steady himself. "You okay?" I nodded, slower this time. "Yeah." Neither of us moved for a minute. The kitchen was still, just the low hum of the fridge, and both of us breathing like we'd run a sprint. "I wasn't planning that," he said. "I know. He trailed off. "I've been thinking about it more than I should." My chest was tight, but not in a bad way. More like every nerve in my body was tuned to a frequency I didn't know existed until now. "I've been thinking about it too," I said quietly. That made him pause. "Really?" His voice was rough, almost unsure. "Since the day you liked that post." He gave a dry chuckle, shaking his head. "I figured you noticed." I smirked a little. Kinda hard not to when you go full heart react on my shirtless gym pic. "Subtlety's never been my strong suit," he muttered. We both laughed, and that broke the tension just enough to breathe again. I leaned back against the counter and looked over at him. He wasn't hiding anything now. His face was open, honest, vulnerable in a way I hadn't expected from him. "So," I said after a beat. "Now what?" He exhaled through his nose, thoughtful. "I don't know. We can pretend it didn't happen. Chalk it up to too much sun and not enough boundaries." I tilted my head. "Is that what you want?" He looked at me, not with panic or shame, but with something quieter, something real. "No," he said. I swallowed. "Me either." The next hour passed in this weird limbo, like we were both hovering just outside reality. We cleaned up the kitchen, sat on the deck for a bit, pretending we were just two guys talking about weather and yard work and everything except the way the air crackled between us. When I finally stood to leave, he walked me to the door. We paused there. "You sure you're okay?" he asked again. I gave him a small smile. "Yeah, are you?" He hesitated, then nodded. "Surprisingly." I turned to go, hand on the doorknob. But his voice stopped me one more time. "You're not just messing with me, right?" I turned back. His expression was different now. Not scared, just unsure. I took a step closer. "Does it seem like I am?" "No," he said after a second. "That's the part that scares me." And then I walked out. Not because I wanted to leave, but because I knew if I didn't, I wouldn't. And I didn't want the next time to be a mistake. I wanted it to be real. I didn't hear from him for a few days. I didn't reach out either. It wasn't avoidance. It was space. Necessary space. The kind where you test if something lingers after the adrenaline wears off. And it did. The silence wasn't empty. It was loaded. Every time my phone buzzed, I hoped it was him. Every time it wasn't, I told myself I was being ridiculous. But I still checked. I still waited. Then, Friday night, he texted, "Mark Whitman, you around?" That was it. No explanation. No emoji. Just a ping that hit harder than it had any right to. I stared at the message for a full minute before replying. Yeah, you want me to come over? His answer came fast. Only if you want to. So I went, and this time, when I pulled into the driveway, I didn't hesitate. The porch light was on, the front door unlocked, the house was quiet. I stepped inside like I'd done 100 times before, but this time felt completely different. He met me in the hallway. No words, no awkwardness, just something unspoken hanging between us, like we'd both finally decided to stop dancing around whatever this was. He reached out, slow, steady, and touched my arm again, that same place as before. This time, I leaned into it. There was something raw in the way we kissed. Not rushed. Not lustful. Just honest. Like, we'd both been waiting to admit this wasn't just about gym pictures or late-night tension. We ended up in the living room, not the bedroom. It wasn't about chillin'. Not yet. It was about connection. A closeness that didn't need to be explained or dissected. We talked. About timing, about risks, about Drew. That part wasn't easy. He asked, point blank, if I'd tell him. I said I didn't know. Not yet. Not until I understood what this really was. And to his credit, he didn't push. I'm not asking you to sneak around, he said. But I also don't want to pretend. I nodded, because I felt the same way. We sat there for a long time, legs brushing, arms touching, until our bodies relaxed into the comfort of it all. At some point, I rested my head on his shoulder. And he didn't move, didn't flinch, just let me stay there. It wasn't fireworks or movie-level drama. It was real, quiet, steady, uncomplicated in its own complicated way. Before I left that night, he walked me to the door again. This time, he didn't ask if I was okay. This time, he said, "Call me when you want to come back." And I did.